while our dear friend Scott Ritter has been traveling in Russia, where he has lots to discuss with us. Scott, what a pleasure. Welcome home. Welcome back to your other home, Judging Freedom, if I can be so bold.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for welcoming me in this fashion. Yeah.
Sure. A lot of things have happened since last we spoke. The most recent seems relatively harmless, but I'm sure there's a story behind it. And that is the explosion of drones in a residential neighborhood not far from Russian President Putin's official residence. My inquiry of your thoughts are, did this come from inside Russia? Did this come from Ukraine? If it came from Ukraine, did American intel know about it? If American intel knew about it, did the U.S. consent to it? Did the United States government consent to a serious or threatening attack on the home of the Russian president?
My belief is that the U.S. government did not consent to this attack. The British government may have, however. The British are far more nefarious in terms of the scope and scale of their support to the Ukrainian intelligence services. It's widely believed, with good reason, that the British intelligence was behind the terrorist attack on the Kerch Bridge, the bomb that collapsed a span. That they were behind, various attacks on Russian shipping, and that they have played a role in facilitating Ukrainian drone attacks against Russian targets, including targets in Moscow. If you remember, on May 3rd, there was a drone attack that actually hit the Kremlin dome.
Right.
On May 9th, most Americans don't know this, but I do because I was in Moscow on May 9th. There was a dozen Ukrainian drone attacks against Moscow on that date, all of which were shot down, but the Ukrainians were making a concerted effort to target Moscow, to create panic amongst the Russian population. And this current round of attacks appears to be doing just that. Are they trying to hit Putin's residence? I mean, that's like saying that the Iraqis were trying to hit the Israeli prime minister's house when they fired a Scud missile during the Gulf War. These things are so inaccurate that they're lucky to hit Moscow. I don't think if they hit Putin's residence, I think they would have said, "Wow, what a lucky shot." But I think the purpose of this isn't to assassinate a Russian president, but rather to sow fear and terror amongst the Russian population. And I think behind it.
Does this stuff succeed in sowing fear and terror amongst the Russian population, or is life normal in Russia today? You just spent about a month in Russia. You know more about the normality or absence of it of life in Russia probably than anyone in the United States today. What's your take on it?
My take is that Russia as a nation has come to grips with the reality that they are in an existential conflict between themselves and the collective West. That this is a conflict that goes beyond Ukraine, and it deals with Russian survival as a nation. The Russian people are fundamentally united behind the government of Vladimir Putin, not because they all support him. That's not necessarily the case, but they love Russia and they're fighting for Russia, and Putin is their leader right now. He has an unprecedented level of support for this conflict, 85% plus. And these drone attacks aren't going to do anything. This is a people who just celebrated Victory Day on May 9th, a day when 27 million of their grandparents are looking down on them. This is something they firmly believe. This isn't Russian propaganda. I know in America we're going, this is a Putin propaganda exercise, a military parade, da-da-da. It's real. It's real. It resonates. These people understand where they came from. They understand who's holding them to account, and that's their relatives. And they're not going to let a couple drones fired by Ukraine, change their opinion. The Russian people are united fundamentally in support of this conflict.
How is you traveled all over the country? How is the Russian economy today? Our friends, Alistair Crook Larry Johnson, Ray McGovern are of the view that the Biden instigated European followed sanctions have failed dismally. In fact, they've had the opposite effect. They've allowed Russia, you tell me if you agree, to demonstrate that it can have a prosperous economy. To hell with the West.
Yeah, let's be blunt here. The Russian economy is stronger today than it has ever been.
Wow.
I'll just say that one more time. The Russian economy today is stronger today now than it has ever been. That means it's stronger than it was pre-sanctions. Why? Because they have fundamentally divorced themselves from the West. The West was an anchor that was dragging down on the Russian economy, encouraging the flow of capital outside of Russia, discouraging investments in Russia. So basically, this nation with a tremendous amount of mineral resources and wealth was losing its wealth to the West. Because of sanctions now, this wealth still exists. Two things. One, there's a big world out there besides the United States and Europe. It's called China, India, Pakistan, Iran, everybody else, and they're all doing business in Russia today. The Chinese are in there big time. They're investing billions of dollars. But more importantly, from a Russian perspective, all this money that was fleeing during sanctions is in Russia now being reinvested in it. I met with city planners who have said, we don't know how to spend all the money. We don't know how to spend all the money. There is construction taking place everywhere in Russia. New building construction, infrastructure. You know, Joe Biden's big infrastructure plan, I'm going to build America, make it better again. It's alive and it's well and it's living inside Russia today. And here's the irony. The Russians actually joke about this. Thank you, Joe Biden. And they mean it. Thank you. Because of you, we have all this. They give you how Biden blames Putin. This is Putin's tax. Putin's this, Putin's that. The Russians are like, thanks, Joe, because they know because of these policies, their economy is stronger now than it's ever been.
This is a remarkable insight. And as you walked around Moscow or small towns, and I know you were all over Russia, which of course is enormous in size, were you able to visit shops, purchase what you want, use an ATM machine, buy gasoline for the car, go to a restaurant, go to McDonald's, whatever you wanted to do?
The one thing I wasn't able to do is use a Western credit card because, of course, Russia's been cut off from that. But, you know, Russia is, by and large, a digital monetized economy. Cash is not king in Russia. Many businesses discourage the use of cash. They are running around with credit cards, their own internal Russian credit cards, the Mir car and equivalents of that. And they can do everything. They pay everything for this. They got rental cars on the side of the road. They call it car sharing. You can be walking and get a phone call that says, hey, mom wants you over for dinner right now. But you're like, oh, how do I get there? I'm in the middle of nowhere. You walk up to one of these share cars, and with your phone, you open it up, you go in, you pay for it, and you can drive it straight to your mom's house, park it, and you're done. This is everywhere in Russia. They have little scooters you can rent.
We have it in New York City with bicycles, but not with cars.
With cars.
This is a remarkable picture that you're able to paint firsthand, Scott. And
they have everything. I just want to let you know they have everything. There's not an empty shelf in the shop. No matter where I went in Russia, and believe me, I was in the big cities and I was in the not so big cities. I was in the middle of nowhere. No matter where I went, they had it all, literally everything.
What is your view of the state of the military conflagration now that Bakhmut has fallen?
Well, nothing's changed in terms of my assessment. I believe that Russia has accrued all of the advantages. I believe there's a lot of heavy fighting left, that there's some fight left in the Ukrainian military, but they can't win. All of the things we talked about prior to my trip, the shortage of artillery ammunition, the inadequacy of air defense is coming out to play as we speak. The Ukrainian military is incapable of launching a sustained, successful military offensive, and they're incapable right now because of the supremacy of Russia's military arms, these glide bombs they have, the missiles that can hit anywhere with impunity, of gathering the forces necessary to resist Russia. This is Russian advantage. I still believe that Russia will be in a position to terminate this conflict come the end of summer, early fall.
Is General Zaluzhny, either the present or the former commander of Ukrainian military, dead or incapacitated?
We don't know. My guess is that he is not dead, but that he has been severely injured because of a Russian strike against a Ukrainian command post in the vicinity of Kherson. I believe also that many senior Ukrainian intelligence officers who were closely coordinating with Great Britain, the United States, and NATO are likewise dead because of a strike by Russia against these decision-making centers. It's basically retaliation for the lunacy of Ukraine sending these drones against Moscow.
Have you any intel or rational conclusion on your own of whether NATO officers, perhaps Americans among them, were injured or killed recently in a Russian attack on a bunker outside Kyiv, after which planes were seen flying to Wiesbaden, Germany, where the U.S. has a major medical center?
I've seen those reports, and I believe that there have been some casualties, if not fatal, at least in terms of serious wounds amongst NATO personnel. Whether these are American personnel, I don't know. But we know that, and we've talked about this before, that there are American boots on the ground, people who are advising from a logistics standpoint, from an intelligence standpoint, an operational planning standpoint. And if they were in a bunker doing that work with the Ukrainian counterparts and that bunker were struck, there's a good chance there were casualties.